Welcome to the Sports Card Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Big Ken. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on a streaming service, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You'll be notified whenever I drop any new content. Welcome. Thanks for being here. It has been a week. Lots of driving. From here, I left Tuesday. I drove to North Carolina, then back to Virginia, back to Chantilly for the show Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday. I only did Chantilly for 2 days, Friday and Saturday, and then home Sunday for some family celebrations. But I want to start out with a huge shout out to all the listeners who came by to say hello, introduce themselves. It's always the best part of the show. On my end, you all see me. I don't see, and you hear me. I don't know or see anybody else. I only see numbers. So I don't know who's listening, who's watching. So it's great when you all come by and introduce yourselves and say hello. Definitely the best part of the show. And I message a lot. I message a lot with so many of you, and it's always great to put a face to the name. So let's jump right into it. Comparing Chantilly to last year's Chantilly show. So I did this show last year in June. So there's a couple of these shows a year I didn't do. So the first time, the only other Chantilly show I did was last June. I did it again this June. I felt foot traffic was this year was much lighter than last year. Friday's show was especially slow, I thought, but there were no guests. A couple of people I talked to said the same thing. There were no guests. I don't know why I seem to remember guests last year on Friday, but apparently there were no guests. But I thought Friday was busier last year. Some people say, yeah, Friday's usually slow, but the rest of the weekend's usually pretty good. I seem to think that I guess it's how busy you are, that if you take time, if you're sitting there, you're looking around, if you're not busy, if you're looking around and you're seeing what's going on, the show always seems that much slower, right? Than when you're busy and you're in the middle of doing, sales and talking to people and things like that. So I got to the show Friday morning, started to set up. Of course, I have a full case of football. Been talking about this all year. A lot of dealers coming around offering to buy lots. I told them all, look, I'm at 95%, way too high. Most of them said, oh, okay, thanks, way too high. And I kind of said to them, why would I sell to you at 85% or 80% so you can go take it back to your booth and sell it and make money? I mean, I've done all the work here. I deserve the money, right? And most people understood that. I feel the same way when I'm at a show because I talk about this and I say this all the time. I used to show up at shows and run around and try to buy inventory, dirt cheap to drop in my case. I don't do it anymore. I may pick up one or two things that I could drop in my case if I'm buying it from another dealer, but a lot of times I'm running around before a show and I'm looking for PC stuff that I want to get for my own PC, or I would be buying now for something in the future, not for the immediate, not for today. And one dealer even said to me, look, if I promise not to put in my case today, or this weekend, would you sell it to me? I'm like, nah, sorry, I can't do that. I had one dealer who came who bought like he bought a 4-car deal, all in that $250 to $400 range. And he paid 95% on them. And he said, look, football season's just getting going. If I don't sell those this weekend, they're great cards. I'm going to love to have them in my case. And I got plenty of shows coming up. And that really kind of sums up how I feel about a lot of what I do. I'll buy it now to sell it at a later time. On Friday, the early bird, the sneak peek was from 1 to 3, and general admission was from 3 to 8 on Friday. Now, I'm gonna say my biggest day for sales was Friday, even though that was the slower. I was only there for the 2 days. That was the slower of the 2 days because obviously Saturday they had signing guests, so there was a lot more people there on Saturday. And I'm thinking it's 105 degrees outside, right? Where else do people wanna be? It's like one of those when it's raining out, people say, "Oh, everybody will come to the show because it's raining," right? Well, 105 degrees, I don't know what most people are doing out there, but, they didn't come to the show or not many of them decided to come to the show. But my biggest day was Friday, um, and interestingly enough, and I talked about this for weeks and weeks and months, right? I'm gonna have all these cars. I'm gonna go out and, the repackers are gonna come and yep. Interestingly enough, I never saw a repacker, a true repacker. I'm sure they were there. A number of dealers came to me late in the day on Friday and said, "Oh, they wiped out my whole case. They bought everything. I need to replenish. I'm buying at 80% or 85%." I'm not your guy. Sorry. And it could have been too that our booth was at the back of from the front door all the way to the very back against the wall is where our booth was. So, it could also be that they just never made it that far. They never made it to the back of the room. Um, so my plan, what I thought was going to happen, what I was expecting to happen, and like I said, I talked about this for so long, was a repacker was going to come by and wipe me out and never happened. So all my sales Saturday and Sunday were all just 1 card, 2 card sales like that, you know. Um, I did one big deal with a kid late on Friday at the end of the show. We were just packing up on Friday, 8 o'clock, for 6 cards, and by far my biggest deal of the weekend. And he was filming it. Really nice kid, young kid, really respectable, um, or respectful, I should say. Just a great kid, really good negotiating. We took a long time to iron out the deal. And when he posts the video, he'll tag me and I'll repost it. So I'll reshare it so you guys can definitely check it out. But what I was expecting was completely different than what happened. But to me, they it it was almost like I wanna say this, and it's gonna sound funny, right? But going back to my roots, right? When I first started setting up as a dealer where people were coming and just buying 1 or 2 cards, there were no repackers, there were no people showing up saying, "I'll buy this whole row of cards," or, everybody was just coming buying 1 and 2 cards. Um, and what I found that what I liked the most about that there was more conversations over the card, right? Over the player, about the market, about the sport, about the team, and call me old fashioned, right? But I just love to have those conversations. I always think every card needs to come with a story. And I used to talk about this. I like to tell stories about cards. And lately I've been finding that nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear a story about a card. Somebody wants to walk up and says, "I want to take the whole row," right? Or they come up and say, "Oh, I right on their phone immediately," and they're showing your phone. Well, the last comp was, and nothing about the player, about the card, about the sport, about the team. It's all just about, I just need to buy this card, and this is what I want to pay for it. And immediately, do you want to flip? Do you want to do that? There's no other conversation about the card. All there is calculations of comps and percentages. So it was really kinda cool this weekend to have conversations with people again, and don't get me wrong, as a dealer, if the percentages are right, okay, you wanna make a big deal, everybody wants to make a I know. I mean, I've said it as a dealer, if you're at a show and somebody comes and wants to buy a lot of stuff, that's why we're here. We're there to sell these cards, but it was just a different feel this weekend with people coming up and actually having conversations about cards. Um it was just a better feel for me to the show and about what I'm doing, right? It made for a much pleasant much more pleasant experience, and again, it felt like the old days, right? When people were just buying 1 and 2 cards at a time and weren't buying out cases. And one thing I wanna talk about that, a lesson, a valuable lesson that I learned, um, at the Fenway show with cards, and I talked about I was firm. I was early with some of those football cards, and I was firm on the prices, and I talked about that, say, "Look, I know what the comps are. This is my price on the card. I think it's fair, and it's what I need to get for it." And I realized eventually somebody would come and pay the price that would that they would see the same value in the card that I did, or moving forward, there's gonna be more valuable value in that card. And I was like that this weekend. Once the show got going and people came up and they were looking, I would say, "Look, I need to be at 90%, and the last comp on this card is this, you know, this is 90%." I didn't come out telling everybody 90%. I brought it up in the conversation, when people immediately, when, they would start calculating with their phone, they would look up, "Oh, okay, here's the last comp." And I would see them plugging away on the phone, and they would start making a low offer. I'd be like, "I gotta be at 90%. That's where I'm at on these cards." And I priced almost every card. It was something new, a couple new things I did at this show. I priced almost every card $20 over comps. So I knew right away what the last comp was, or what I felt was the last comp on that card, just by subtracting the $20 off the price of the card, right? And we've talked about this. I could have just put it at the comp and then say I'm just gonna go under, but I think everybody likes to, see a little bit more of a discount when they're buying something. Very, very rarely to get anybody to come up and is just willing to pay full price on a card, and even then, I'd be like, "Oh, I can give it to you at, whatever." And I was transparent of the cards that I was over comps on, and what my firm price would be on those cards. So, I had this Jordan Love, Contenders, 1010, PSA 1010 auto. A lot of people were interested in, and there were a number of comps in the 22 to $2,500 range, and then there were 2 more recent comps, about 1,900 $1,900. And I had a $2,300 on there, and I told them exactly, what my firm price would be on that card right now. And it was probably the most popular card in my case this weekend. And I would tell people right away, "Look, I don't want to waste your time or mine. This is where I'm at on the card, and I'm not going any lower, and I'm not even looking at that 1,800 comp," which is probably right, right? I mean, that's probably because we're talking about comps, but that's not what I want to sell the card for, right? I have a feeling that that card has a lot of room to grow, and if somebody else sees that value in that card, they're going to pay strong for the card, and then get that. If not, I'm going to be the guy that's going to do it. Um, but I think just being honest with people and just telling them right up front, this is where I need to be with the card, not wasting anybody's time in any negotiation here. If you're not willing to pay over the last comps, or the last sale of the card, and I think people appreciated that. They're like, "Hey, appreciate that. Thank you." I said no this weekend a lot more than I said yes, and I'm sure you can imagine if you go out to shows. I mean, I've got a card in the case for $150, and I get an 80 or $90 offer on the card. I come right back at what the 90% is. I'm like, "Look, I'm at 90%, and this is what 90% of the comp is." And they may ask again, "Can you do this, and can you do that?" No, I mean, that's kinda where I'm at right now. Um, I had other dealers coming up, and they agreed to pay 90%. They didn't wanna pay 90%, but they found some value in my case and made sense for them, made sense for me. I still think these cars have room to grow. So even at 90%, if you buy something at 90% and it goes up 10% or 15%, there's some room. You're not gonna make obviously the person who graded this card makes the most amount of money. Someone like me who got into this card low, maybe I did grade it or I picked it up when the market was down, months ago, and now the market has climbed back up. To me, if I'm paying strong back then, I'm paying the comp. I'm okay. This is the comp. Okay, I'll pay for it because I know that card's going to go up, and there'll be some money. And basically in all the cards that I've picked up, and I've been doing this a few years, so I kind of know where to be at and who's, what cars to be buying, things like that. Not 100% right all the time, but there were no L's so far with the inventory that I sold. Starting with the football in this past weekend, there were definitely no L's. There were a lot. They're all positive on that. Um, another thing I did, it was a first for me this weekend, was I made a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet with all the football cards, put in, and I updated it as like Thursday night, Friday morning. I updated those comps, and then some of them, I mean, I know, but I was putting little stars on them that I know if there were going to be some auctions, like some eBay auctions ending, like Friday night or Saturday morning type of thing. I put little stars on there, so I kind of knew, like, okay, maybe I better just go back and recheck those again and see what those ones sold for, because a lot of it was like bouncing up a little bit. A lot of it was creeping up on those. So it was really not that the prices were coming down, but the prices I've seen were coming up on it. Um, so I printed out the spreadsheet, and not only did I print out what the current comp was, but I also listed in there, two categories of a 95% comp and a 90% comp, what it would be. So I pretty much knew on all the cards, and if I didn't know, I could look at that pretty quick. Um, it could also just, look up look it up on the phone too. But generally, people say, "Oh, can I see that card? I took it out." They would be looking it up. I could glance at my spreadsheet and say, "Okay, I know what this is. I know this is the comp. This is the, I got if I needed to, I'd made some notes with some, last sales. If there were some comps that had jumped, right? So say there was a card with a $720 comp and a 450 and a 505, like that type of thing, right? But the last comp was at 7 something. Well, obviously I can't be up at that last comp, but I may be a little bit higher than the other two on something like that. And sometimes we need to negotiate or agree and I guess that's really what it comes down to, what you agree with the comp is. But I'm pretty good at you know averaging out and being pretty close to what most people would consider the comp on a card. Uh, and it was the spreadsheet was super helpful, and it also allowed me, again, another first, to really, write down. So I really knew, as I knew what I bought into the cards for, or what I got the cards for, and what the grading fees were. So I was really, really just being more for myself, because a lot of what I do, people ask me a lot of questions and I try to answer them. And this year, and starting, with this, I thought to myself, like, it's going to help me, not only myself in knowing, the profit and loss, and where I did well and where I didn't, maybe didn't, I did better in one area, not another, but also when I'm answering questions and I'm talking to people, I can really have solid numbers and say, yes, this card I was able to do this, and this card not so much there. So it helps me to just to provide better information, to the listeners, and it's just the people in the hobby that I talk to on a daily basis. And just jumping back on the comps, a funny thing that I see happening a lot. I mean, it used to happen. Now it's like constantly at the shows. the people show up and, you're asking like $300 on a card and they'll be like, "Oh, okay. I see the last comp on here was, like 158, 192, and 205." And I'm like, "What? I just looked at those comps. It was like 325, 310, and 295. Oh, that's not what came up on my phone." And I'm like, "Well, here, click here. They're right here. What do you look? What do you?" They're like, "Oh," and they act surprised. "What are you using?" I'm like, "I'm using the same app as you." I mean, what's your search? What are you putting in for your information for your search? I don't understand. But so many times this weekend, I mean, that was just constant. And I would just look at people and just give them that look and be like, I they're my cards. I know what the comps are. I know what the last sales are. It's my job to know what the last sales were on these cards. If I'm selling these cards, it's my job to know what the last sale is, right? How could I be any good at what I'm doing if I have no clue to what the last sales were on all these cards? And the more popular cards, you're continuously looking them up all day. Um, I left Friday, like most people did, at the end of the show and to me, Friday was a great day. A lot of people were down on Friday. A lot of people were down. Well, tomorrow should be better. Tomorrow will be better. Heard a lot of that packing up, getting out of there. And I know so many of the dealers and so many people at the show. Um, Everybody left thinking Saturday was going to be a big day. Um, I felt in my mind that no repackers came on Friday, so well, this is what's left in my case, what I have left in here. So they'll be back Saturday, to dive in here and get stuff out. And again, it just never happened. It never happened. Just more dealers showing up saying, "Oh, I got wiped out yesterday. I need to replenish, but I can't pay 90% or 95%." And I said, "Yeah, that's fine. I understand." Uh, and my wife even asked me, "Were you disappointed? Like you talked all year about repackers coming. Were you disappointed that they didn't show up?" And if you would have asked me before the show that if no repacker showed up to the show and bought a bunch of stuff or whatever, would you have been disappointed? I may have said yes, but now after the show, I'm glad they didn't. I know, if of everything I've talked about, it goes against a lot of what I said, but I'm kinda glad they didn't. I had great sales, right? I had a lot of great conversation with people. It was a great weekend. It was a great 2 days for me, right? I'm leaving with still a lot of, pretty solid inventory moving forward. Um And my biggest fear going into this show was that card prices were gonna jump up a lot between now and the National, and I'd have some regret selling it off early. And the only reason I'm selling here in June is really because of scheduling and timing of shows and my vacation and what's gonna happen between now and the National. Right? That there's really not a lot, no other big major shows for me to get to, and the ones that are, I'm on vacation for those. So, that was my plan to do that, and I felt like, at that time too, I had space at the na I had a table at the National. I said, "Look, I could always put these football cards out, it's not a big deal," but then I lost that space too. Now I'm like, my next honestly, my next big show that I'm scheduled for is the Fishtown show, which is in August after the National, after SoCo Expo and the National. For me being set up, my next being now I'm sure I'm gonna set up at local shows. I'm sure, I may find something else to set up at, but if I don't, my next big show that I'm, you know, scheduled for is in August. So that's a decent time away right now from where I am now. Because I mean, I'll bring some of these football cars to the national, but I'm really going to concentrate on the soccer, selling the soccer out there, because that's the show that I'm going to, right? Why? I mean, I can go to, in my mind, I'm like, I can go hit trade nights with, my football, but apparently all the trade nights are the same nights as the SoCo Expo, right? I mean, this is what the National did. They said, oh, people are having after show. There's a couple after shows that are running Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Okay, well, that's how we're going to do the trade nights too. And my show is running from 6 to midnight, so I don't know how often I'll be getting there. So now I'll be during the day. I'll be at the National. I could certainly bring football in there, but you know how I feel about selling at a discount. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But um and it's harder to me, it's harder to sell at local shows, to get 90% on cards at local shows, because these local shows, these are where people are buying their inventory to take to the big shows. Right? I mean, that's kinda how these, these pop-up local shows, these monthly local shows, that's really what they are. People are there buying, buying to grade or buying to pick up inventory so they could take it to the bigger shows and get a better percentage on them. Um, so Saturday, back at it on Saturday, uh, autograph guests at the show. It did get busy in the morning, like, it was a little slow, and then it got busy once the guests, were starting to sign. You could see it was getting louder in the room and more people were showing up. But then it slowed down again on Saturday. So Saturday wasn't a great day for me. I mean, I did have sales on Saturday. Um, I accomplished a lot on Saturday. I don't wanna say it was a terrible day, but, as far as sales, Friday was my big day. From Friday to Saturday, probably Saturday, I did about 20 to 25% of the amount of sales I did on Friday. Um I tried to get out and walk around and anything I may have missed on Friday, dealers are showing up later and stuff like that, looking to see, some stuff I might wanna pick up from my PC or pick up to take out, to Cleveland, like that type of thing. So I was getting time to walk away from my table, so it just show you typical Saturday at a big show, you shouldn't have time to walk away from your table. You shouldn't even have time to think about, eating and things like that. So it was definitely a little different on Saturday. Saturday had definitely a different feel to it. Um, and then by around 1 o'clock, I started checking. I knew I was driving back to Connecticut, so I started checking with Waze, like how long it's going to take. And it started about 1 o'clock. It says, it's going to be about 6 hours, which is like 30 minutes more than really it should have be. It should be. And then by 2 o'clock, it says 6.5 hours. And by 3 o'clock, it's saying 7 hours. I'm like, you know what? It's just getting later right now. At that point, the show was pretty slow. I wasn't doing that much of anything, so I packed up. Um, Even though the show went to 5, I packed up, I guess, around between 3 and 3:30, and loaded up the car and headed out. Tried to get a jump on it, get on the road. I had a bunch of pickups this weekend, and most of that I can't show you because I either traded them or I already sold them. The pickups that I sold almost right away. And I was surprised being set up at the back of the room. I didn't expect anything good to show up at my table, where people selling. Um, but good cards were showing up at the table with some good buying opportunities, and I thought to myself, and sometimes people too, we always talk about, zigging when everybody's zagging. One guy came back and I opened the case. I'm like, how did you not sell these already? He goes, oh, I just came through the front door. I started at the back and worked my way to the front. And I said, all right, well, that works for me. And I bought a bunch of cars from him and, sold most of them off, while I was there. So, or traded out of them. So I was happy about that. I purchased at the Mohegan Sun show. I purchased a Jalen Hurts downtown PSA 9, and I paid strong. I paid strong for it at the time, and I figured, you know what? I talk about the downtowns and the kabooms being, sought after, and in part of the deal. I did with the kid late on Friday for the 6 cards. That was one of the cards in the deal. And when the deal was finally done and they were done videotaping and they walked away, who I saw a guy who was kind of standing there watching the deal go down. Uh, he came walked over to me and said, "Are you going to be here tomorrow?" And I said, "Yes." And then I thought at that point, oh, he probably wanted something and he didn't want to hold me up because the deal actually happened. The show was already closed. We were probably 10 minutes after it closed, or 15 minutes. And he said, "No, I had that exact same Jalen Hurts, the downtown, but in a PSA 10. If you're interested in buying it, I'll bring it by tomorrow." And I'm like, "Yeah, definitely, bring it by." So he came by the next day with the card, and I ended up surprisingly enough, I only ended up paying $100 more than what I sold the 9 for, and I picked up this Jalen Hurts. I'll hold it up now if you're on YouTube. Uh, Downtown PSA 10. So it was interesting how that worked out, but I was happy to you know almost upgrade from the 9 to the 10. And I didn't even put this card in my case at the show. Immediately after I bought it, I just put it aside and I said, "You know what? I'm gonna hold this. I'm gonna hold this 10 for a little while because I just have a feeling that he may have a big year, or just a lot of hype, moving further into the summer. So it may be maybe a card I could do well on if I hold it just for a little while longer." But that was the only pickup the only football pickup that I had that I actually held on to that I kept. There were some other small things that I had picked up that I moved kind of quickly. And somehow I've ended up with a Brittany Griner PC. I don't know how this happened. A couple of years ago when I was setting up and I had, women's sports in my case, and she was being detained in Russia, and it just felt like people were just like liquidating, getting rid of her cards. Amongst other cards, not just those cards, but they started showing up at my table and the prices were way down on them, and you know, they were cheap, so I started buying them. Um, and I have a ton of them, right? And you know, if I'm out walking around at a show and I see one, the prices are usually pretty low, so I usually buy it. And it was no difference this weekend. I picked up now. This is the third gold prism that I have now of hers that I picked up. They're inserts and they're all numbered to 10. This here is the Get Hype Gold Prism. All the other ones I have are PSA 10. This is a PSA 9, but happy to have it. Gold Prism. I'll just hold that up. I know she was just announced. She's on the women's Olympic basketball team, so hopefully her market will go up with the Olympics this summer. I may be sitting on a little gold mine. Who knows? We'll see what happens there. Uh, on Saturday, I did a massive trade with my guy Tom at Kirill Recognize Real, who is a fellow WNBA women's soccer fan like myself. And Tom is also a big hockey guy. So Tom mentioned on Friday while I was looking at some of the soccer and WNBA cards in his case that he was building the 2012 Fleer Retro Metal Universe, the PMG hockey set, the PMG Reds hockey set. And of course, I had the Alex Ovechkin from that set. So on Saturday, we made a pretty big deal. I made a big deal with him. I traded him the Ovechkin PMG Red to 99 and a number of my Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese cards, golf and pop culture cards, and you know, I got 3 soccer cards, all one of ones. The first one is Panini, the Don Russ Elite Soccer. It's a Sophia Smith. I'll hold that up for you. Sophia Smith, one of one. And of course, you know, The soccer, they're going also be at the Olympics this year. I'm not sure. They're certainly not favored, but hopefully some good things, right? If not, I mean, these are just unbelievable cards to have. This is Rose Lavelle, the gold hometown. So the hometown for them are like the downtown, right? In this set. So the hometown, this is the gold hometown 1 of 1. Very big card. And the last one is the Parkside. It's a Jaden Shaw. This is her gold rookie card, gold 1 of 1. That's a big card. So super excited to have those. Knowing I'm setting up at the Soccer Expo out in Cleveland, I thought these would be great additions to my case, but I'm so excited to get these cards right now. I'm not sure I'm in too much of a hurry to sell them. So I'm not sure what the future has with them and me, but I think we're going to be together for a little while. So I'm happy to have those cards. Huge shout out to Tom. Appreciate the easy deal. And this was one of those trades that I think both people walked away extremely happy. And I just wanted to say one thing I didn't mention earlier. Obviously football was, the big part of my cases for selling. But the Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, it just does not stop. I mean, I had a half a case full of them, and between the sales and the trade with Tom, I'm down to a handful of, low end of each cards, maybe like five or six cards. I mean, I started the weekend where probably 30 combined of Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. And believe it or not, um, people just come looking. I mean, they showed up and they're like, "Oh my god, I looked all over for Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese. I haven't found them any." Like, and even some people who came and took a mental note, and then they left, and somebody else that came by and they came back, they're like, weren't you the one that had them?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm telling you, they're selling fast," and I'm happy to keep selling them, right? I stopped and then I reloaded again, and yeah, the Angel Reese cards I bought, I probably had 40 of hers, numbered and auto card. They've all sold, and I've done very well with all those cards. So super excited. I mean, I don't even know where to go now, if I should reload again and try to get some more to put in case for future shows, or just save all that money now for the WNBA, the Prism release, in the fall. So still just super excited about how popular they are, not only at these big shows but the small shows too. um, and again, huge shout out to everybody who came by to see me this weekend. Really appreciate it. I have some guests lined up over the next few weeks, so you won't have to just listen to me. You'll have some other people to listen to. And 3 episodes. This is episode 47. Actually, in total, episode 197. So we're right around the corner to episode 200. I haven't really thought about what I would do for that, what kind of fanfare is going to come with that episode. But a lot of exciting things coming up in the next few weeks. So definitely stay tuned. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And if you like what you hear, please definitely subscribe, and most importantly, tell a friend and spread the word. Until next time, take care of yourselves and everyone around you.